Hello, welcome and welcome back. This is Jacob, and today we are going to be continuing the module short story narrations for the various operators in Arknights. And once again, we are going to be doing a module short story for operator Passenger, a character that was introduced to us through the A Walk in the Dust side story that, funnily enough, was like 35% about him and 65% about Kaltseid. But regardless, outside of that, if you do like the stories about the game and such, and haven't read or heard about the A Walk in the Dust story yet and what is in there, I would highly recommend to give it a go. It is a good story, skips a bit forward and backward in time, and showcases quite a lot of details from the past of certain people. Plus, it introduces us obviously to Passenger, who is the focus of today's video. So first off, like for the previous video in this series, which was about Skadi and her second module, this will be a look back and an update to what the modules do, considering since the recent update, we have multiple stages to each of the module, 3 stages in total, and Passenger here has also received a second one. So we're gonna look today in the second half of the video on the story that is associated with it. And in this first half, like always, we are going to look at the stats and what the modules do now. Also, as a final side note, the story today is more so a diary than anything else, going across the years past the A Walk in the Dust story. So yeah, if you are listening to this and haven't heard that story or know anything about Passenger, you might feel lost a bit during it, because there's going to be mention of stuff that is pretty much from the story itself. So yeah, I would recommend at least looking up like a summary or something about the events of that story. Same could be said about the first module story, which by the way will be linked in the description of the of this video that I did some time ago at this point. That one by itself is pretty much just an insert story into the events of A Walk in the Dust, mostly from Passenger's perspective. But anyway, let's begin with the modules themselves. So first off, let's go over what the talents do, and well, talents, what the original selection does on stage 1, and then I'm gonna show you what the upgrades do. So first off, his original form is, well, trait. The trait basically allows him to do chain casting, jumps between 4 targets, and each jump deals 15% less damage and inflicts a brief slow. So it slows the target down for like just the fraction of a second. His first talent, Mechanism Analysis. When attacking enemies with 80% or more HP, he will do 20% increased damage to those enemies for 3 seconds. And the second talent, Lone Soldier. If there are no enemies in the surrounding 4 tiles, his attack goes up by 8%. That's his original state. Now, his first module is focused, well, I wouldn't say fully on his chain stuff, as you're gonna see in a moment, but you'll see. So, the only thing it does is it basically reduces the damage loss on each subsequent jump. So just as a reminder, each jump on original is a reduction of 15%, while here it's only a reduction of 10%. Also additionally, the slow is now a short slow, which means it lasts a bit longer than normal. And that is pretty much it. His second and the newest module as of recent makes it so that each jump has no damage fall off anymore, but the slow goes back to a brief. So you could say in these original states on stage 1, this first one is kinda okay, but if you're using him specifically for chain casting and dealing damage from chain casts, such as his first or second skill, as a quick reminder, first skill is an auto skill with very little SP requirement, but the next attack from it deals 210% attack. The attack jumps between 4 targets at most, and the slow going off from this skill is increased to 1.5 seconds, while the second skill is a manual skill The range increases when it's active. The attack goes up by 20%. By the way, this is rank 7. The attack interval is decreased, which means he attacks faster for the duration of the skill. And the maximum number of jumps is up by 5. So you could say that his newest module is pretty much kind of meant for those first two skills. Maybe. But obviously if you're using him as a mostly chain caster. Now, what do these two modules do when upgraded to stages 1 and 2? Well, let's take a look. So, the first module, the electromagnetic regulator, on stage 2... Oh, by the way, because I'm pulling these images from the fandom wiki. If anybody who is watching this is maybe working on the fandom wiki or knows someone who is working on the fandom wiki, can you please tell them, because it's kind of bothering me. This little icon here is swapped between the two modules. Please. Anyway, so first module, electromagnetic regulator, once again in his normal state only makes it so that the damage jumping between targets is only being reduced by 10%, and the slow is a short slow instead of a brief. Now, on stage 2, that stays the same, but his lone soldier trait down here gets improved. Let me bring that up a bit. Gets improved, essentially. He gains passive SP recovery rate of 0.15 per second, which is already okay. And on stage 3, that 0.15 goes up to a 0.25. So it kind of buffs his overall usage of how fast can I fire off the manual skills, including not just the manual skills, including the including his passive skill. It's pretty much nuts a bit, not too much, but very well, very well received. That is kind of. I wonder what at some point in my free time I'm gonna test him out during IS and stuff, just to see IS2, just to see how crazy this can go, considering speed upgrades and the little generator that you can pick up in there and put on a character. I think you know, just perma with that thing, speed upgrades, and this on stage 3. If I ever get it to stage 3, he can probably just perma spam his third skill, which brings me to the fact that this increase pretty much makes his third skill kind of nuts, considering this is already kind of a low volume of SP that you need to acquire, but considering that it also stores 2 charges, you can fire that shit very frequently with that skill, with that module. That is quite interesting to think of. But his second module, let's look at that one. Now, as I said, this one is pretty much meant for chain casting, at least from the onset, but it buffs his first talent, Mechanism Analysis. So what does it do? Mechanism Analysis, again, is a passive which makes it so that when he attacks enemies with 80% or more HP, he will deal 20% increased damage to them for 3 seconds. So that damage essentially on stage 2 gets buffed to 25%, and on stage 3 the requirement of HP goes down to 70, while the damage goes up to 28%. So yeah, second talent feels more like it's meant to... It can very well work as well with his skill 3, but again, considering it removes the damage reduction from the jumps, feels more like it's meant for skills 1 and 2, in general at least. But it definitely feels like it could also be used very well on skill 3, considering skill 3 is a massive area attack that just turns everything into dust, essentially. But yeah, interesting modules. Not sure on which one I'm gonna keep him and use him, but I guess depends on the situation, considering we have now options on certain operators. So pick and choose what you want, I guess. But let's go into the story. Once again, the story today is pretty much a... pretty much his life story past the events of A Walk in the Dust, which do get discussed in other places as well. But yeah, let's begin with the story, shall we? So, the module and the story itself are called, or titled, Gold of Crowns. And it goes as follows. The Reeve-Steve Black Market, where I was born anew. At the end of the Western Passage, one can see the land and the sky. Once it was an arms dealer's territory. I worked under him in my first few years in this place. He was a born despot. He left several welts on my back, but I have no hate for him. It was only natural, just as it was only natural that his irate underlings slit his throat in drunkenness. Before throwing him from a cliff, I placed my first gold coin in those turncoats' hands, and it was warm to the touch. The northern oasis, Reeve-Steve's border, for a time and an age the favorite turf of the mercenaries. Soldiers were replaced batch by batch, and there was only ever one leader. My biggest customer and the one who taught me how to taste wine. But that winter, he died. He died in front of my storehouse, his body bruised and battered. He coveted my creations and died to my precautions. Mercenaries keep no loyalty, and thus I rewarded his subordinates at his funeral. Unfortunately, his life couldn't even buy a decent bottle of wine. The southern side, where the towns sit, messengers and merchants come and go in spades, the value they trade in circulating through the villages. The lords recognize as much, hence why Ebut's lord Amir had such a special fondness for the place. Sargon's unbearably chaotic, barbaric politics never interested me, but I needed the lord's support. The division of powers within the Reeve-Steve Black Market bored me so much I'm loath to mention it, but we all had something to say when it came to the Lord. I'm surprised that I held such frail relations for so long. A lord that doesn't judge by the cover, perhaps. Out of respect, I didn't personally attend the revolt, but once his family were puppets, I did show up to pay respects to that poor boy. He was akin to Elliot, akin to me. The Reeve-Steve Black Market Center. An old tomb lies there, an ancient pasha's grave. Every night, Isin carefully wipes his memory under the light of the stars. A long time ago, I exhausted his wealth, and by now, I've repaid him several times over, but he doesn't pay any mind. His age looms by the day, and aside from a few errant, insignificant questions, we never even speak. That day, old Isin asked me why others call me Sand Soldier. Sand Soldier. The meaninglessness of a grain of sand, the pathetic fate of a pawn. The term is filled with significance I abhor, hence why I gladly accepted it, as a price paid in advance for the impossible trial to follow. The Reeve-Steve Black Market had its towns, and they were fuel ready for the fire. I waited for the Lord Amir of Ebut to come. If I could, I would have burned even the golden sands to nothing. And in the final moment before I set the flame alight, what came to mind was the afternoon a young Elliot Glover, was taken to tour an institute of science, where he sees a new model of Originium engine ignite and combust, upon which a tremendous machine stirs to life. He's always remembered how much that moved him. I've always remembered. Alright, and there we go. That is the Gold of Crowns tiny little story that pretty much depicts a bit of passage of time after the events of A Walk in the Dust. How he fared through life, even though a bit of it gets also discussed in his file. And I think a bit also gets discussed from what I remember in the A Walk in the Dust story, but here we get a bit more of a picture of how his life has been and how his view of things has been, essentially. But yeah, an interesting little passage. But yeah, little Elliot has definitely changed from the little boy he was at the beginning of that story all those years ago. Before, well, he became what we know him as. But this will be today's story. Thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed this, and considering that the very next episode after this is gonna be a lot of shit about the 3rd anniversary stuff, please look forward to it. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye bye.